When we talk about the Reds' outfield equation, we are forgetting about one guy.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and my co-host Steve Offenbaker will be alongside me here shortly as you are watching a replay of the second half of Thursday's live show. We got into talking about the outfield a lot more and what the Reds could do, some internal options as well. What do we expect from Jake Fraley? What do we expect from guys like Spencer Steer and Stuart Fairchild? Just how much can we count on Stuart Fairchild being a key part of this outfield in 2025? But we begin by looking at Rece Hinds. Rece Hinds is a guy that we've not really talked about a whole lot, and there's a couple of reasons why he is at least worth mentioning in the Reds outfield equation for 2025. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It's game time. And what time is it now? It's time for us to talk about Rece Hinds. Topic here, because this was actually a comment that we got on yesterday's show. Sticking with the outfield conversation, this came from Keith Souter. Because when it comes to the outfield, we have said, go get somebody with a power bat, go get somebody with, decent defense and all this other stuff. Keith Souter asked a question that I've been wondering a little bit myself. He says, maybe the Reds already have that big outfield bat. Why is no one talking about Rece Hinds? The guy was unreal for about a month and regressed. I know shades of Aristides Aquino, but I really feel like he's ready. All you need to do is give him enough, and I think I cut off at bats. And I appreciate Keith's comment there on yesterday's episode. I don't know that I'm there with let's just give him every day at bats and he'll figure it out. But I'm a little bit interested to see what his 2025 looks like, because the underlying numbers, at least according to Baseball Savant, said he hit the ball hard, he swings the bat fast, he's got all of the different underlying things that I believe that you can turn into a middle of the order power bat. Plus, he has a good arm. That is something he showed all throughout the minor leagues, that he has a really good arm, so he could be an asset at a corner outfield spot. It's just the Reds aren't really in the position to be giving at bats and waiting for somebody to develop. So that's where the hard part with Rece Hinds comes in for me.
Yeah, I'm not ready to hand Rece Hinds a spot on opening day. And, what he shows the team and what he shows us in spring training might impact this a little bit. But here's what I did like while he was at the major league level. He started to do something that he hadn't done in his career, which was take the ball the other way. And if he can apply that, and if he can use that to slow that swing down and get better against the breaking pitches, I think that he could be valuable for this team. I think that he could be an option, but not at the beginning of 2025. He could be an option later in 2025, more into 2026. This is that whole hope thing again. And I said this, I can't remember now if it was yesterday's show or a couple days before, but I'm really tired of every conversation starting with, man, I hope. What I need is a concrete gonna happen kind of thing. And for that to be the case, they're going to have to go sign an outfielder. I hope Rece Hinds could be good. I hope Will Benson rebounds. I hope that Jake Fraley and a right-handed somebody could pair up to form the perfect outfielder. I hope that Friedel's an everyday healthy guy. I hope that Spencer Steer doesn't have to play. You see where it goes? It's every single outfield position starts with I hope. And I need them to go sign a guy that I know that is going to deliver me 35 home runs, that's going to play the corner outfield every day, or at least 150 games. That's the guy that we need, where the conversation doesn't start with the words, I freaking hope.
I'll tell you this. There's one thing, if I'm Terry Francona and I'm Chris Valaika, that I'm telling Rece Hinds, and that's just take more pitches, because believe it or not, and I know the commenter said this, and I know you said this as well, he's got to get better at the breaking ball. Yeah, he had a 45% whiff rate against the breaking ball. But you know what he had on top of a 45% whiff rate? A batting average of 292 against the breaking ball. So there's something about it. If you could just lay off the bad ones that you're swinging and missing at, you're hitting it pretty well. In fact, his expected batting average was 341 against the breaking
He
ball.
did show us something. I'm fully acknowledging he showed us something with what he was doing, and he changed his approach and he started to do things that we hadn't seen him do. I'm really encouraged by that. That's just not enough for me to be willing to rely on him right now. And I hope he's viable. I hope that we're talking in July about how he's just really turned it on and he's forced his way into the lineup and he's doing great things and hitting monster home runs. I mean, I was in Cincy, if you recall, when they called him up for that monster week of home runs and got a right on the spot view of some of those at bats. Couple of those big ones I actually had. That's when Auntie Darlene had got us the diamond seat. So I was sitting right down there watching him from behind his at bat. It was impressive. I hope, Jeff, that he can be a guy, but I can't rely on it.
But he's in the same conversation as Will Benson, where it's just like, it feels like you have to give him a lot of at-bats to figure some things out. And I don't know that the Reds have a lot of at-bats to give. They have a lot of at-bats that need to be earned, because this year needs to be a moving year. This needs to be a year where they get to the playoffs, they move through the playoffs, and there's a bit of a run. They hired Terry Francona to do just that. If they thought they were still in a position where they could give playing time, I think David Bell would still be here. So they don't believe that, and I don't think we're going to see that. You got to earn it. So he's going to have to earn it through spring training, and I don't know that he can earn it there. I think he probably starts the year in AAA as well, and maybe we see him late April, early May if he's just hitting the cover off the ball and move.
This from Michael. Have I been working on a Tito impression? Listen, I've been watching everything that Tito's been doing this offseason. I love this guy. I love his energy. I love listening to him talk baseball. Guy's an old school guy, and I love those guys. I will develop an impression somewhere along the way, but right now I'm just enjoying listening to Tito talk.
I got one.
That time will come.
I got
you
one.
Got one? Go for it.
So here's the deal, Steve. Actually, turn my light down a little bit there. Fix that. Here's the deal, Steve. We're going to go out there and we're going to kick somebody's ass. What do you think?
Pretty close.
I like it.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close. That was more Anchorman than Tito, though. But we'll circle back to that. Listen, this from Branch Brown. Hey, Branch. Thanks for being here. It's been a minute since we've talked to Branch. I love Branch. He says you can't count on Jake Fraley. Where are you at on Jake Fraley? He was really good as far as, his slash line looked great from a batting average standpoint. His on base percentage was up. He looked good, but the power left him. And we all know he had a lot going on last year. So, definitely not going to knock the performance that he was able to deliver with what he had going on. If you recall, he got sick early in the year and lost like 15, 20 pounds and just never really recovered from that. And I think that's kind of what played into the loss of power. I think he was super light for where his body normally is. He had all of the things going on. He was trying to recover from being sick and play through things. And I don't know that you can evaluate his performance and say, we can't count on Fraley. I still think he's got pop in that bat. You know what I mean?
But I think I know where Branch is coming from here, though, because you're making his point for him. It's not that you can't count on him and you have to count on him to be bad. It's that we don't know who he is. We haven't really seen the real Jake Fraley. We saw power, but not of like a consistent, like extra base hits all the time power. He had some homers and he had some singles in 2023. In 2024, the homers went away. So it was mostly singles, mostly walks. He's a good on-base threat, I think. But at the same time, I don't know. And what I don't know about Jake Fraley is why we can't count on him necessarily. Because if you tell me who he is, I think that we have to all agree that 2024 was an outlier. You're right. There are a lot of things that were going against him that he had no control over. But that doesn't mean that I can count on him to be the opposite of what he was in 2024. So because we don't know, I don't know that I can count on any one thing coming out of Jake Fraley. I will say that I trust his athletic ability. I trust him to be an athletic outfielder. I just don't know what that looks like from a production standpoint. So I don't know that I can count on a specific type of production from Jake Fraley. We're going to roll into 2025 thinking, okay, I'm interested to see what he's got. I can't tell you what that is, though. We've got a lot more about the outfield coming up next.
You can take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets, NBA tickets, NHL, NFL, all of the tickets over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Listen, Jeff and I tell you about this app all the time. We both use it. We use it to go to Reds games. We head down to the banks. We find our favorite spot. We post up. We have dinner, we have a beverage, and then right about time for first pitch, we jump on the Game Time app, we get a great deal, and we head on into the stadium. If you're going to a venue that you're not familiar with, Game Time has the view from your seat built right into the app. And with all-in pricing, you know exactly what you're going to pay when you click on that ticket. Again, just download that Game Time app and create an account. You use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB, you're going to get $20 off already greatly discounted tickets. Terms do apply. Again, create your account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So what if the Reds have to use him as a platoon to form that perfect outfielder? Now, I've talked about it being Fraley and Fairchild. You know I'm not super sold on Fairchild, other than when we did a deep dive on his numbers. You look at him against left-handed pitching and you're like, I can live with that. He's right. Okay there if exclusively used against left-handed pitching. But what if the Reds have to go this route and either bring in a platoon partner to pair up with Fraley, or they go Fraley Fairchild? I mean, at this point, we've been saying that they could really use two outfielders. We're stressing about now them getting the one. There still could be a platoon situation, especially if you want to get Spencer Steer back onto the infield.
So let me give you this, because I think that he's a dark horse candidate to be a leadoff guy from the on-base perspective. If he comes back in 2025 and he's still showing singles and on-base potential, and that's what he's doing, and he doesn't have the power like he had in 2023, then I think there's another conversation to be had of, did we have him pegged wrong? And if we change our focus and we say, is he an on-base guy? Is he a leadoff guy? Because he's got the speed. He can steal bases when you need him to. He's not going to steal as many as Ellie by any stretch. Bigger side of the right field platoon. I think, too, that if it's something that his average and his on-base were fluky in 2024, then Will Benson has an opportunity. There is a bit of a backup plan, not the one that you love, but I do think that Jake Fraley is going to show us something. I just don't know what that's going to be, but I think that he's going to show us something in 2025.
This is going to be a little bit of a fun conversation here. Let's go to this from Mike Graham. Mike says, I don't understand why we constantly talk about starting or even adding platoon players. We need a starting 8 and a bench. Fraley, Benson, Fairchild, etc. are barely bench guys. Well, I think that is not true. I think Fraley would definitely be a good bench guy to have around.
Yeah, I would love.
As far as Benson and Fairchild, I mean, I'm totally indifferent on what happens with those guys, other than Benson should be in AAA, and I'm still not sold on Stu. But I want to talk about this platoon thing, because this is old baseball mentality here, right? And I'm also inclined to start my thought process in this lane, which is go get 8 guys that can play every day. That's not exactly baseball anymore, though. Platoons and splits and using the analytics and getting guys in the I often say these words, getting guys in the position to have the most success, helping your players be successful, and you use all those tools that are available to you, and that naturally leads you to a lot of platoon situations.
It's small market baseball, unfortunately. Like, I know that the Dodgers use platoons in a lot of different spots, but they're also paying like $1 billion to Shohei Ohtani. And Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts. So they kind of supplement those guys with platoons at different positions. So it's easier to say, well, the Dodgers are doing it, so it's not just small market. But I think teams like the Reds and teams like the Rockies and teams like the Guardians employ platoons at like every position that Jose Ramirez doesn't play. So when it comes to platooning, it's a bit of a cheap baseball mentality. It's okay, we can't pay $200 million for a roster, which that's how the market has moved. If you're paying 8 everyday players, you've got a payroll that is comparable to the Mets or the Braves or somebody like that. And the Reds just have told us in so many different ways, as much as we would love them to not be this way, they've told us that they can't do that. And so they're going to find ways to work around the $200 million payroll and platooning guys where it's like, okay, you are good against left-handed pitching. You are good against right-handed pitching. And they're like, yes, we are really good against those things. So pay us a ton of money. And they say, well, no, but you can't play against the other side of the plate. So if you can't do that, then we're not going to pay you to be a guy who can play every day. We're going to pay you to be a part-time guy. And part-time help in any industry, not just baseball, is cheaper than full-time help.
And Jace makes a great point here also that over platooning can be a bad thing if a guy gets hurt, which we've seen often. This is where you get Stuart Fairchild facing right-handed pitching, right? Because they didn't have anybody else. So it is a risk. But I also really like if they can't go get Santander, if they can't go sign Teoscar Hernandez, I would much rather see them form an outfield combination of Fraley and somebody that's good against left-handed pitching versus
Fraley and Ward. Yeah.
And even if they do go get a Santander or Teoscar Hernandez or Ward, even I forget what his splits look like, but
he was really good against lefties, not that great against righties, but also not unusable against righties.
Right. So for me, if we really want to get Spencer Steer out of the outfield,
right,
we're going to have to see a platoon. I keep coming back to that because I'm kind of with you. I would much rather see Spencer Steer really get into that super utility role that we really want him in, especially now that they've traded Jonathan India, because by necessity, Jonathan India was going to fill that role. And we didn't like that, but I like Spencer Steer in that role. I like Spencer Steer having a day at third.
And he likes that too. He
told
you that.
He does.
Yeah.
He did tell me that. And he's good at first base. You can play him all over and not have a lot of fall off, and you keep that bat in the lineup full time. And that's kind of where I want the Reds to get. For that to happen, they've got to sign an outfielder and create a platoon. So do we have a platoon partner on this team for Jake Fraley right now? I'm not convinced of it. I know what Stuart Fairchild's numbers look like, but I also know what his mental lapses look like when he's in the field. And I don't know if it's a good trade-off. The reason to move Spencer Steer is to get better defense in the outfield. And Fairchild can give you good defense, but he can also give you mental lapses. So I don't know, Jeff.
Defense.
It's very inconsistent. So for me, I don't know what you do there, but I feel like there is an outfield platoon in the Reds' future, even if they go sign a starting outfielder.
I kind of feel like too, if it's a scenario where they go get a Taylor Ward or even a Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas was similar to this, where he was very left-handed heavy, where I kind of feel like Fairchild needs to be in a competition with Rece Hinds, because for what Fairchild can do against right-handed pitching and for what Reese Hinds can do overall and in the field, I think there's a question to be had of which guy's going to make the major league roster. And plus you still have that thumb injury, the thumb subluxation or whatever it was that Stuart Fairchild suffered, and he's got to prove that he's healthy. So we will find that out once they get to Goodyear in February, whether or not he's even healthy enough to be on the opening day roster. So there's an element of that I look at Fairchild and I say, I don't know what I don't know about him still. And I think that makes me a little bit uncomfortable to be handing him the keys on opening day to what amounts to about 35% of the playing time. And I would much rather see a stronger platoon option or an everyday option, ideally. But the Reds are basically telling us that don't ever think that they're going to have an everyday 8 from here on out, because the market has just priced this small market ownership out of doing that. There's going to be platoons at some position somewhere.
Let's move into a little bit of a Candelario talk for just a second, because, Keith says we need to trade Candelario if we can find a sucker to take that contract. And there was a minute of a rumor, right? Just like a hot minute that the A's might be interested in Jeimer. But I don't think that was ever really realistic. I think if someone takes Jeimer, the Reds are going to have to eat that contract, and I don't see that kind of deal getting done. He would be a throw-in. He would not be the featured piece. He would not be the featured piece of a deal. This is what I'm saying. So I think we just need to wrap our heads around that he's going to be here until this contract runs out.
There's one thing, and I don't know if it really is a conversation with the A's at this point, but I was reading this in The Athletic the other day because Evan Drellich really broke this down in that the A's received a ton of revenue sharing money because of their move. They are really getting propped up by the rest of owners in baseball right now. And there is a rule that you have to spend, I believe it's 105 or 110% of the revenue sharing that you get. And even after the Luis Severino signing that the A's made, they still have to spend around $25 million to suffice that. If they don't, then the Players Association can bring a grievance against the A's, and they will win that grievance, and that will be very bad for the A's in the long run. So it is likely that they still have to spend $25 million. And they're not likely to lure a $25 million free agent to Sacramento. So what do you have to do? You have to trade for some players. There is an opening there where a Jeimer Candelario to Sacramento makes sense. I almost said Oakland. We're going to say Oakland a lot this year. That's just going to happen.
That's gonna happen.
We'll do a jar or whatever. I don't know. Drop a dime in or something. But anyway, there is an avenue where that could make sense, but I've not really seen any concrete rumors outside of a Sports Illustrated article that somebody was like, hey, this would make a lot of sense. It wasn't a Nick Kroll and Billy Beane are talking about this. It's a little bit below actually being a rumor, and it's more so this move makes sense. So I'd love to see it, because I think that would help out a lot of different roster mobility options here. But at the same time, it's not currently in the works. Just what does the future hold for this Reds franchise? We kind of get into the weeds a little bit coming up next. There's never a wrong time during any sports season to get a big return over at FanDuel, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. You don't have to be like that one guy. I remember hearing that there was a guy that bet $3 million on a game yesterday on the Eagles to beat the Panthers. That was crazy talk. You don't have to bet that. Just put $5 down. That's all you got to do. Plus, you can check out baseball futures. There's the NL pennant, the future for the NL pennant. The Reds odds actually got longer since Juan Soto went to the Mets. They are now 40-1 to win the National League. Look, they're gonna get better, and Terry Francona is gonna make them better. So that just seems juicy to me. I'm throwing a couple of bucks on that. Trust me, you should do it too over at FanDuel.com. Get a big payday today on your sports knowledge over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. They are an official sponsor of the NFL.
You can't afford a dime jar, Jeff, because you're already going to have bought me my bottle of Pappy when Jeimer starts third base on opening day, if I remember the bet. We've got it in the archives. I'm going to have to get that footage.
Yeah, and I never said bottle of Pappy. I don't remember.
Going to be a bottle of Pappy. All right, this from Ben. MLB needs a lockout to institute a salary cap and a floor based on greater revenue sharing. This is where we're going, Ben. This is where we're going.
And after 2026.
And I think that Steve Cohen, bless his heart, has pissed off the small market owners enough now that they're going to have the gumption to do this. I was on the fence whether the owners would really be willing to shut the sport down for a year to get these things done. But now that they have made a player have more net worth than the bottom third of the owners in the league, oh yeah, this is getting done. There's a work stoppage coming. There's going to be a salary cap. There will be a salary floor, because that's what you're going to have to do to get a cap. And then baseball will reset and move forward and maybe be a little bit more sane, because it can't continue this way. They, by God, better eliminate deferred payments, because that can't continue. The Dodgers
over $1 billion. The
Dodgers
and deferred
are wrecking the sport. I can't believe this is being allowed to happen. It's just that bad for the sport. So there's a work stoppage coming, Ben. You're absolutely right. Those are the things that
Steve, and I'll make you a comparison that you can relate to. Steve Cohen is the arbiter of succession for this salary cap. He's bringing it about right now, and I think we're going to see a fight. It's going to be a lockout. It's going to be a strike or whatever. However it's termed, it'll be termed a strike by the owners, and it'll be termed a lockout by the players. But it's going to be a battle.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Let's see where we're going to go from here. You guys have been doing great. If you have stuff way back up in the chat, put it in again, guys, because you guys have been talking about so many things. Stuff is just flying right by. Troop says he thinks cheap owners are ruining the sport. If you want to win, put your money where your mouth is. Jinx comes back with this, though. Castellini has $400 million. How's he supposed to compete with the teams that have 12 billion to 20 billion, like Dodgers and the Mets? This is a good contrast because if Carl Linder and the Linder group had held on to the Reds for maybe 3 or 4 more years from when they actually sold the team, there's no way that Bob Castellini becomes a professional baseball owner, a majority holder of a professional baseball team. The Reds at the time, the numbers escaping me, was it 175 million, 250 million, somewhere in that range, right? 225 that he paid for the Reds. This team is valued at over $1 billion now. He would never be an owner. It would be a guy like Cohen. So what's going to have to happen? 270. So the policies that Major League Baseball institutes, when they do get to a salary cap, and it's going to come with that salary floor, it may force out some of these guys that probably shouldn't be owners anymore. If you can't compete at a certain level, now I think the money right now is ridiculous. I don't know what this sport's going to do if it has to keep handing out 15-year, nearly $1 billion contracts. It can't continue. It can't survive that way because we, me, you, all you, won't be able to afford to go to games on a 81 games a year basis because it's going to cost so much to go between concessions and ticket prices. So for me, some of these changes may be that, I'm sorry, Bob, but you guys are going to have to sell if you don't have the resources or you're not willing to ask the minority owners to kick in money, which is something that Bob says he absolutely won't ever do, is ask those guys for more money. So if you're not going to do either one of those things, you're going to have to sell.
And that's the key, too. It's not just Bob. There's also a minority group of owners that kick in something. So it's not just the 400 million, but again, it's not even close to the 12, 20 billion, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And there was something I saw that Forbes did the other day, the expected revenue versus the spending on the roster. And the Mets, Steve Cohen, spends over 100% of the revenue he earned on the roster. There's a difference not only in the net worth and not only the money that owners have, but also the way that the team is run, because there is no directive given to MLB owners on how to run your team. It's almost like there are 30 individual businesses that are being run by different business owners. The Reds have told us before that they run it as a nonprofit. Whatever they make, they put back into the team, so on and so forth. It's a goofy thing to call a professional sports team a nonprofit organization, but they use that as kind of the example. On the other side of it, you've got Steve Cohen that runs his team as a passion project. He just wants to see them win. And quite frankly, I wish that's what all owners approach sports as, because how fun would that be? Where you don't have these teams at the bottom of the league and the small markets and all that other stuff. They're saying, well, there's only so much money we can spend. Like, I kind of wish all sports owners had the idea of, we just want to win. This is a passion project. I'm fine. I don't need, the revenue from this to make a living or whatever it is that some owners treat it as. They just go all in and they go ham on the roster and they spend all the money they want to spend. Like, can you imagine if 30 teams did that? Now, number one, you would definitely need a salary cap because then you're giving out much more crazy contracts. But on the other end of it, you would just have a lot of great parity. And it doesn't feel like we have that in baseball. It feels like there are 10 teams, going back, not to give Phil too much credit for that PowerPoint that he had a couple of years ago for the Rose Reds. But you remember that PowerPoint that he gave to the Rose Reds where he was just like, there are X amount of teams that on opening day are already out of contention. Well, let's get rid of that. Just get a bunch of awesome teams on this game and play 162 just full throttle game. I would love to see that.
Kerry says, do lockout strikes impact the players' years of playing time, contracts, etc.? That's all negotiated, right? I think the last work stoppage, one of the negotiation points was the players were credited with the missed service time. And then they move forward. So that's one of the things that would be negotiated. And who will buy small market teams? This from Alex. Who will buy small market teams? If, here's the thing. Baseball still operating in the dark ages, continues to run its sport regionally. That's why the market size matters. You want to know how you overcome the small market problem? You start running Major League Baseball like they run the National Football League. You start running it as one big organization with 30 partners, and you get rid of this regionalization. Everybody gets their payout from the money, and you run this sport as a collective. And they've already got antitrust exemption. They can do that, but some of the greedy is greedy and they don't want to share. And that's part of how you fix the sport. That's part of what's going to come out of the work stoppage. I know that bums you guys out, that it's like, I'm talking about it as it's a certainty. It's because it's a certainty. This sport's shutting down at the end of 2026. And let's just enjoy the next 2 years, because that's what's coming. And then maybe we get a better product on the flip side of it. But that's what's coming.
It's going to have to, because the business side of baseball, the side that nobody likes to talk about, but the business side of baseball is older than any other professional sport in this country. The whole idea of owners against players and all that other, it goes all the way back to the reserve clause, like back in the early years of baseball. And because of how all of that has been fought over the years, everyone is so entrenched in the way that the business side of baseball is run right now, that any progress towards centralized revenue sharing and a salary cap has to be so incremental. That's why you are seeing Major League Baseball take over the broadcasting rights of some of these teams, because that is how they are able to centralize the revenue sharing. That's how the NFL does it. The NFL does not have a bunch of team-centric channels. They have CBS, Fox, NBC, and ESPN that all have contracts to them to broadcast those teams' games. That's why you don't see the nationalization of baseball like you have seen for the NFL and the NBA. And even now the NHL is starting to get up on the whole nationalization thing. Major League Baseball wants to get there, but the union that Major League Baseball has is far more powerful than any other professional sport. So to fight them has to be a step-by-step process that takes years and years and years. They have been building up to what will be the fight after 2026, after the 2026 season is over, for decades. And that's why we will see that lockout, because that's where they have kind of planted their flag. This is where we're going to get the big change, and it's going to take a big effort.
All right. Well, I think that is a good spot to go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thanks, guys, for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day. We appreciate you being here with us on this live show. Lots of you folks here. Do me a favor, click the like button, subscribe, click that notification bell, share the show with your friends. We love talking Reds baseball with you, and we want to talk Reds baseball with them. The offseason, there's a lot of it left. I know nothing happened there at the winter meetings, but there's still lots of rumors to track. The Reds are going to make some kind of a move, and we're going to be all over it. So we're going to keep gathering up the information. We're going to keep bringing it right back here to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
I never said a bottle of Pappy.
Pappy, brother, you better start.
Said a bottle.
You better go buy some lottery tickets.
Number one, yeah, where the hell am I going to find a bottle of Pappy? Number one, but number two, I never said it, so I'm not going to worry about looking for it.